So welcome everyone. This is the Congressional Family Business Caucus being hosted by Family Enterprise USA. We're going to try to remember to speak into the microphones, which we will share. Appreciate everybody coming today. I just want to remind you all, you probably hear this already 3 times today, but Family Enterprise USA promotes and advocates for generationally owned family businesses and their lifetime of savings at a national level in Washington, D.C. all sizes and all industries. So today, be a little flexible with us for these caucus meetings. For any of you who have attended them in the past, we hope that we will have members of Congress wandering into the meeting, and we will ask them to say a few words about family business and their association with this bipartisan educational family business caucus. So we have a wonderful panel of family business owners as well as Family Business Center executive representing all of the family business centers in the room today. So I would like to begin by first playing, and I will remind everyone that this is being recorded on both audio and video. So we use this video on social media, we send it out to our email database because we want to educate not only members of Congress and staff, but voters and everyone in America around family businesses and how important they are to our economy and our country. Many of you have probably heard me say these statistics too many times, but I don't think I can ever say them too many times, and so I'm going to state them again. 87% of the businesses in America are family-owned businesses. They generate 59% of the workforce and 54% of the GDP. So 83 million jobs, 7.7 million in GDP. That's why they are so important to our country and this economy. So Darius, you can now play the video.
The bipartisan Congressional Family Business Caucus was formed in late 2022 and has 4 co-chairs. They are Jody Arrington, Republican of Texas, Representative Brad Schneider, Democrat of Illinois, Representative Claudia Tenney, Republican of New York, and Representative Henry Cuellar, Democrat of Texas. The purpose of the caucus is to raise awareness and educate about how family businesses impact the U.S. economy, job creation, and their communities. It does this by bringing together members of Congress and family business owners to have a conversation at caucus meetings in D.C. It also provides research and data on family business ownership and challenges. It is an educational and not a policy caucus. For more information about the Congressional Family Business Caucus, please visit feusa.us.
Thank you, and if anyone wants a copy of this or a link so you can share it, we'd love to provide that to you. The more we can share it, the better off we all are going to be in educating the world around family businesses. So I want to also thank Squire Patton Boggs, the Brownstein Law Firm, as well as John Moreno and John Gugliana for the amazing help that they've done putting this whole event, this whole day together. So thank you all very much. So we're going to start now with the stars of today, and that is the family business owners. So I'm just going to go down the panel, and I'll remind you all that the theme today is succession. So if you will each introduce yourself, and we'll start with you, Mark, and introduce yourself and your company, and tell us a few comments around how you dealt with succession planning in your business, and if you can, talk about how legislation has maybe impacted that planning and that succession of the business with the family members.
Sure. Hey, how's everyone doing? Good afternoon. My name is Marc Goodhart. I'm president, co-owner, and chairman of the board of Goodhart Sons Incorporated. We're based out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We're a 4th-generation family-owned business. We're a custom steel fabricator and installer. We were founded in 1935 by my great-grandfather. Next year will be 90 years in business for us. We have 130 dedicated employees. Average tenure of our employees is between 16 to 17 years. We have, and I feel this is probably one of the greatest compliments that I can have, we have many non-family, father-son teams that have, fathers that have been with us for 4 decades that have brought their sons into our business. There's no higher praise to me than that. In fact, our shop superintendent next week, after 43 years, is retiring. I promoted his son yesterday to our next superintendent. Our niche is design-build type projects, concept to completion, if you will. If you want an idea of what we do, back in the 70s, my grandfather actually sold this project and worked on it with a company called United Hover. They were actually funded by the Alaskan Department of Transportation. We built the first of its kind hovercraft that was approximately 30 feet wide by 50 feet long that transported supplies through the tundra to the villagers in Alaska. It was a really, really interesting project, really kind of put us on the map, if you will. Fast forward to today, we recently just completed a project that landed in DC water. We built 24 reactors, design build again, through the process of something called hydrolysis. It converts sludge into energy. So you can imagine what I'm talking about. Research and development is an integral part of our business. And we have 4 current owners in the business. We're all 4th generation. We're in our early 40s to early 50s is the range of age. So succession is quite a bit, out in front of us. But we're talking about it. And quite honestly, there's been a change in legislation that really has us scratching our heads to what the future looks like. I mentioned it a little earlier today in some of our sessions. It's HR 7024. It's basically a significant piece of legislation that starting in 2022, U.S.-based R&D expenses must now be capitalized and amortized over 5 years. The impact of this results in significantly higher taxable income, resulting in significantly higher tax payments. It basically limits our ability with these higher tax payments to hire more employees, pay higher wages to our current employees, invest in capital equipment, and be, quite honestly, more philanthropic. HR 7024 fixes this. My father always instilled in us that there's 2 really guiding principles in running a successful business. The first thing is your word. It means everything. The second thing is cash is king, or Rhonda, cash is queen, as you reminded me earlier. But in doing so, we abided by that principle, so we've been able to navigate these hits. But I know a lot of other family-owned businesses in our shoes that have had trouble navigating that path. Hopefully, it passed, thankfully, through the House. It sits in the Senate. I don't know where it goes from here, but it is absolutely a paramount concern of our family-owned business as we look towards the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So you should know R&D expensing is a very important issue, and it has bipartisan support being restored. So we're hopeful, as you are, that something will happen there. So, Kevin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Tao. I work for a company called Brands. We're a second generation family-run business based out of Orange County in California, in a city called Cypress. We're about 10 miles west of Disneyland. So every 9 o'clock, every night, I hear the fireworks. It's 9 o'clock. But I also wanted to quickly introduce, actually my mom is here, we're talking about succession. My mom made the trip with me to Washington, D.C., so hi Mom. She's still the big boss, so. Very important, I recognize her on that. Our business is pretty much it's kind of, you guys hear me okay? Kind of going back, I don't know. We're in the fashion jewelry manufacturing space, and so what we do is we essentially take product design from design spec all the way to production delivery. Business started about 30 years ago. My mom and dad basically they did a swap meet at the local Cypress College, which is where my dad got his associate's degree. And ever since then, they've been able to build the business to where it is today. Now, with regards to succession, it wasn't something I certainly wanted to do in terms of joining the family business. I fought vehemently against it. But after a while, my grandma is a very good persuader. Grandma Lucy said, Kevin, you better go and do it. And I said, okay. So I eventually did it, and I'm very fortunate that I did, because I've gotten to participate in panels like this, meet a lot of good family business owners as well, which has been really exciting. You know, obviously, I think I'm a little biased when I say that family businesses are really important, I think, to the fabric of a community. I think that, you know, just again, having spent 10 years now at the company and also having worked alongside other family businesses, you find, I've seen firsthand just how much care and attention I think family business owners have, especially first-gen owners have with regards to how they treat their employees, how they treat their staff, and their customers in general. But one thing that I think I wanted to speak on today, and why I was really excited about this topic, is because I do think family businesses do a lot for local communities that they reside in. And what I've noticed in my generation, and the generations especially after that's coming, I feel like there's a lot of individuals deciding not to join the family business, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But I think it's something that is a bit concerning to me, because I think family businesses again brings a lot to local communities, and the fact that those family businesses are not continuing on, I think, is a detriment to local communities that they reside in. So I don't have any specific bills or legislation that I can speak to, but I did kind of want to make the ask to say, as we think about legislation, as we think about policy and things like that, I wonder if there might be an opportunity to look at looking at family businesses and what they might bring to the table in how we classify policy initiatives, etc. The same way that we might look at an economic policy for small business, medium business, large business, I wonder if there might be a discussion about what family business can do, because it is a very unique setup. I think a lot of family businesses, because at the end of the day, it's their name and reputation tied to those businesses. They naturally, whether it's good business or just good, good thing, it's the right thing to do, they tend to contribute a lot back into local communities. If you think about libraries, or if you think about community events, more often than not, you're finding the family businesses in those cities are the ones that sponsor those events. The fact that those businesses are not continuing on to the next generation, I think, is something that hopefully there may be programs to incentivize or encourage family businesses to continue on the succession plan. And Pat can speak to this better than I can, but I think with every successive generation in terms of the family business moving on, more than half don't continue on. And I think that's something that hopefully we can utilize some sort of policy or legislation to hopefully encourage that to kind of continue on in the future. But again, thank you all for allowing me to speak on this today.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Henderson, and I am retired. And it's interesting when you've had a 50-year career, so you have a 50-year career, you think you're always going to be in your 30s and 40s, and the next thing you know, you find out you're in your early 70s. And you start listening to people talk about you, to my right, and I was there one time, and it changes very quickly. And with that change, it really takes on a completely different responsibility than what you were thinking about in your 30s and 40s. So high level, 2 careers, 15 years in the electronics industry in the Silicon Valley area. Then family business recruited me to an organization, family business, that leased, developed, and managed medical office buildings, where I did that for 35 years. Accounts would be core and shell projects for HCA, for Stanford, for Sutter, etc. And what was so interesting, and this is where I think family business is so different, you hear this from our previous speakers. I was dealing with month-end, quarter-end, year-end numbers on the tech side. I had no idea what community was. once I got involved on the family business side, I got involved in community, and I never looked back again, and that was one of the core drivers on why I stayed. I had opportunities to leave, but I thought this is where I can make a difference. And somebody once said to me that I think it's so important that when you're doing something, you know whether it's significant or not by whether it outlasts your own lifetime. And what I got involved with because of the family business side, I know will outlast my own lifetime at this point in time. But the core that really comes into play, especially at this point as I look back on it, is two things really in particular. One is from the government side, one is from the succession side. The succession side first is dads need to, moms, I'll go both ways, need to know when it's time to step aside. And one of the things that I've noticed, both in some of the work that I've done professionally and what I've done more as an amateur, but I've been fascinated by family business for almost 30 years, is that we can hover too long. And you can't hover when you're in a leadership position and you're into your 70s, and you've got to be able to communicate to your children, or who's ever replacing you, what is the plan? Otherwise, as somebody I met years ago by the name of Leon Danko, who was in family business consulting back in the 70s and 80s, he said, you're going to leave decisions to a grieving widow that you can make today. And so whatever you've not talked to your children about, talk to your children about, and whatever you haven't put in place as far as the business model is concerned, put in place. So that was really point number one. And in my case, my son replaced me. I didn't know he was going to replace me exactly. It ended up going through our board. We have a board that consists of family and non-family. And I just looked at it and I said, I'm not going to be the chairman, and I'm not going to be the executive chairman. I'll be a board member to provide assistance, but he's got other people around him, he knows who I am. But that's one of the things I think that breaks down the most and why it's so hard for family, because it's hard to be in business with family in the first place, let alone having people hover when it's time to step aside. So I'll leave it at that. The second one is from the government side. The things that we dealt with are 75-year commitments when we do a building, particularly for medical care. It's so hard when you don't know government strategy around estate planning and other types of income tax events that go year to year or administration to administration. One of the reasons I got involved in Family Enterprise USA was because I thought, now looking back on my career, I can have that influence, I can speak to people. Whether people do something about it or not, I don't know, but at least I can be involved to help make a difference. And the more we can stabilize planning over a longer period of time, the more successful business will be, because they'll be more comfortable investing and not thinking about it from my vantage point to say, well, geez, I'm not going to live to be 100. What does the next 10 years look like? Or what does the next 15 years look like? And I don't want to be distracted by that. So, thank you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Danielle Kohler. I'm the 6th generation family owner of the Vollrath Company, and I also serve as chairwoman of the board. The Vollrath Company was originally founded by Jacob J. Vollrath back in 1874. So that makes us a 150-year-old company this year. And we're very proud that we continue to be family owned, have been family owned, and our family plans to do that into the future. We manufacture primarily stainless steel, aluminum products, which are related to food service industry. You probably, if you've been in a C-store, if you've been anywhere, you've probably touched something that we've touched. We do OEM manufacturing, we do all kinds of restaurant, front of the house, back of the house, all that sort of thing as well. We have 7 manufacturing facilities in the U.S., primarily based in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, that's our headquarters. And then we have a manufacturing facility up in Newport, Minnesota, and then one over in Wichita, Kansas. And then we also have that most of our manufacturing is in the U.S., but about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, we had an opportunity to purchase what we call Little Vollrath in Catalonia, Spain. And so Pujadas is the name of that, and they operate out of Spain as a European model. We also have a manufacturing facility in China.
So as a global company that employs more than 1,300 people worldwide, we are very proud, again, to be family-owned. Some of the challenges that we faced, being sixth generation, my grandfather, generation 5, decided to put his shares into what they called a GST, or generation skipping trust. This was in order to maintain and hopefully, keep the company long-term. Well, we don't know why he decided to dump it on us, Gen 6, but that created a quandary. So when we, of course, my father died and we were presented with that issue, we had a lot of advice, right? We have lawyers, we have accountants. How do we navigate this? Because one of the biggest problems with a company of our size is that close to 50% of the value of the entire value would be taxed on our death. And how does a company navigate that, right? Most of our assets are physical assets. They're not liquid assets. So on the advice of some of our attorneys and our CPAs, obviously we're going through that process of transferring that ownership to the next generation through some of the same trusts and gifts and things that we can. But in reality, it would be so much easier if we didn't have to deal with that. Also, we are a pass-through entity, so as some of you may be aware, in essence, without that 199A, we would be paying almost twice the amount of tax as any of the just standard corporations that are represented in our country. And so with it, at least we have some sort of relief. Without it, it will completely change. We will not have the resources to invest in our employees, in our infrastructure, in salaries and benefits, and our communities, and all of that. It's a lot for us to navigate. So it's surprising how much that we often feel like Congress doesn't really feel a pain. All right, they need to be thinking about the family businesses who have these challenges. So that's probably one of our biggest concerns. We're figuring it out as we go, but honestly, we want to continue our company for the next 150 years. I mean, this is a big deal, and for that to happen, we need legislation and policy that will be friendly to family-owned businesses specifically. We are actually mid-market. My husband and I own a very small retail store with 4 employees, but that's another story. So I appreciate the time to talk to all of you today, and all an interesting time.
Thank you. 199A is very important to all family businesses. We understand that. We hear you, and we are working with members of Congress. So now, I'm going to turn over to John, but I just want to make sure that everyone knows that there are about 15 family business centers here in the room. Really appreciate your support, appreciate you being here today, appreciate you sending our survey out every single year, because we couldn't do it without you. And so John has been designated the speaker for those family business centers.
Thank you, Pat. My name is John Cunning. I'm the Executive Director of the University of St. Thomas Family Business Center in Minnesota. We are one of about 40 active member-based centers across the country that support family business communities. The program I run has more than 100 family businesses as members this year, which is an increase of more than 40% from 2 years ago. This increase highlights the need for family business education and connection. Our members range in size from less than $1 million in revenue to over $1 billion, with a common thread of working together to create multi-generational opportunity and support in their communities. Recognizing the crucial role family dynamics play in business success, our center focuses primarily on what I call the fun things families get to deal with besides running the company. Things like fair versus equal, finding the right level of conflict, entrepreneurship in the next generation, ownership rights, and succession planning, to name a few. When I came to St. Thomas, I noticed we were the only entity in the state covering these topics. What I've come to learn over my 10 years on the job is that a center's value goes well beyond the content, but is more about our ability to help families start important and often tough conversations in a structured way, and to build a community where families don't feel alone in their situations and can share best practices. To get a picture of our important work, here's a snapshot of a 4-week period our center is in right now. 3 weeks ago, we held a women's leadership event. 2 weeks ago, a Black Family Business Access to Capital event. Last week, the program facilitating generational conversations and discussing retirement, financial transparency, expectation of the next generation, and risk tolerance. And in 2 days, an event for advisors on 3 aspects of transitioning the family business. In total, more than 400 people will attend these events, elevating our community. At our most recent event, I mentioned my opportunity to speak today and unexpectedly received a round of applause. Many family businesses don't feel heard, and they view me as that conduit. In conversations after the event, families pulled me aside to share issues. Here are a snapshot of a few. Labor, finding enough workers to allow for growth. This existed pre-pandemic and is even tougher now, especially in the tight labor market in Minnesota. Sunsetting tax provisions. Changing legislation and laws. Many smaller family businesses don't have regular communication with experts on tracking these changes. In communities of color, especially in Minnesota, our family businesses are facing issues accessing capital. And specific issues like an excise tax on purchasing new trucks and how that limits companies in updating their fleets. And for smaller family businesses, some are being pressured to unionize, cutting margins to a point where they can't compete with larger competitors and risk closing down. Getting congressional help with these issues will allow us to continue focusing on the fun things families get to deal with besides running the company, so they can find their own multi-generational opportunities. After our conversations today, please reach out to family businesses in your district to hold important conversations, understand current and potential future impacts, and stop by to meet and engage with owners, family, employees, and the communities they serve. I guarantee you it will be time well spent. Family businesses represent a snapshot of what keeps America running, trucking to construction and medical devices to professional services. Accounting for 54% of U.S. GDP and more than 60% of employment, I dare say their needs are among the most important. They are rooted in their communities, driven by a different set of values, keep employees longer, support local nonprofits and charities, and frankly, most see themselves as stewards who can make a positive impact through their family business. The why isn't about money, the why is about others, and that's why I care so much about family business success and why we're here today. The establishment of this dedicated caucus demonstrates a commitment to understanding and addressing the distinct obstacles faced by family businesses. By ensuring family business concerns are heard and represented in the legislative process, you're creating an environment where they can thrive, contributing even more significantly to our local and national economies. I can tell you that the business owners I work with appreciate the support and the proactive efforts of this caucus and Family Enterprise USA. Thank you for the time, and Pat for allowing me to share.
John and all the other family business centers, please continue to tell us and communicate with us around all these issues that your family businesses are facing. We want to be your voice here, so we need to understand the issues they're facing every single day running the business. So thank you. Mark?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Nicholson, third generation family member with Red Jacket Orchards. Red Jacket is based in Geneva, New York. My grandparents bought the farm in 1958, started with 200 acres. And over the years, each generation, succeeding generation built upon that. And I think that's certainly one thing about multi-generational family businesses. Typically, each generation is building on the next. And that's particularly important in the agriculture sector, high capital industries where you can't just jump into these businesses and start from scratch. You really need to be building upon each generation. So my story, and we're also a beverage company, and so we've evolved really from the ag producer side to the value-added side, and now really focus on the beverage piece. Yeah, I guess I'm a little unique in the sense that I'm no longer with the family business, and so when you talk about succession planning, I'm actually a product of what was somewhat successful succession planning, but certainly wanted to share some takeaways from that. Number one, you have to plan for the unexpected with a family business. We were fortunate in that we started that process when my brother, I have an identical twin brother, people in this room can vouch for the fact that if you only knew Brian, you would be confused if you walked in right now and just saw me. And so when we started in the business with my father, we did work with accountants and attorneys to make sure that we had in place plans for the unexpected. As family business owners, we're jacks of all trades, masters of none, many of us, and so as pointed out here with the family business centers, having resources is critical, and particularly when you're a smaller business, those additional resources to get expertise is very critical. So just really quick, my story, I would say I loved my father and brother when we first went into business together, and I still do. And I think that is like one of the key parts of successful succession planning. We had, and interestingly enough, the plan we had in place, we were already going through succession, and then we had some very unexpected financial challenges hit the business. And so we had to go back and start from scratch, and had that not been in place, it would have been a much more difficult process. And so today, I successfully exited as an owner, but I am still now working with a family business in a different capacity, one that has been able to maintain our relationships and maintain the ongoing succession in the business. And so these resources, I wish we had, and this was back in 2010, I wish we had some of that we were aware of, because without those experts and without that expert planning, I might not have been in a position to be able to go back and work with a family again. So thank you.
Last but not least, Steve Wells.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Steve Wells, and along with my brother Marty, we started a family business 33 years ago. Later, my cousin joined us. It's called American Food and Vending. During COVID, I learned that we were classified as U.S. critical infrastructure. It's not like that we're in high tech. Our company feeds people away from home by providing managed dining, catering, and refreshment services at the workplace. But I guess it was because we serve in every kind of industry, in every sector, from manufacturing, technology, to defense and energy. And we also provide dining services to higher education venues. And I'm really delighted to talk to you guys all about succession here today, because we're right at the forefront of it. The three of us who are responsible for the company, between us have 7 next-generation children, and the oldest is finishing graduate school next year. For reasons I'm going to discuss, you'll understand why succession for me is always at the top of my mind. But first, let's start with the obvious. Family business accounts for, and I think it's already been said, more than half the GDP of the country, and more than 80 million private sector jobs are generated by family businesses. So I think we can all agree that keeping these things going from one generation to the next is a good idea. It's a good idea for the country. So I think if you think about it also, in the United States, let's be honest, I think we get an F for how we're doing. We do a terrible job as families in perpetuating family businesses. And very few, y'all know the statistics, very few are able to do it. And it's gone on really for every decade of the last 2 centuries. But the truth of the matter is it's not just a hypothetical, it's real. In my own family, on both sides of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side, going back more than 100 years, in each generation, our family was not able to perpetuate the family business. So yeah, families get a low grade. And it's true, sometimes it's willful or purposeful, but more often they just don't know how to do it. And after all, why would they? For 200 years, this was not studied, and this was not taught. I went to the, appeared to be the best hotel school in the country at Cornell University, and there wasn't a class on campus. I have to say now, thanks to my friend Dan, who's running the Cornell Family Business Center, Swiss Family Institute, that's all changing, and I salute Dan and all of you who are here with family business centers, because you're really changing education in America in a very profound and important way. Let's go to Congress. Congress also gets an F for public policy on this, because they created major barriers to succession, like the estate tax, which I'll talk about shortly, which really stacks the odds against succession. In 2012, when the estate tax became permanent once again, I was forced into a great dilemma. Give away my company immediately, and for a chance at succession down the road, or wait and watch the window of opportunity to pass it on close. This was kind of a Sophie's choice. It was continue to reinvest all the profits like we were doing, keep growing our business. We were on a very high, fast growth trajectory for everybody else's benefit. And if I didn't do it, there was almost no way within the next 15 years I would be able to transfer this business because of the estate tax. The alternative was, I want you to think about this, immediately turn over my company to my 7- and 8-year-old children. Yeah, exactly. Now, who would do that? Give up all the sweat equity that you've been working for, and not only that, of course, they don't know this, but I work for them, I've been working for them, and for the next 20 or 30 years, as long as I continue to work, I'm still working for them. Who would do that? Not on your deathbed, not when you want to retire, but at 48 years old. I didn't want to do it for lots of reasons. I want you to think about the risk of turning over a business to 7- and 8-year-old kids. Well, what if I didn't save enough for my own retirement? What if they turn out to be lazy? And I see it's about 20 till 5, and I got a kid who came home yesterday from college, and I'm not sure he's up yet. You know, I mean, worse is they could have been drug addicts. Fortunately, they're not. But maybe they're just incompetent business owners. But I did turn it over. I'm not sure if you would, but I did. And I felt compelled to, because of how much I believe in succession and because of our own family experience. And I did it because I thought these were good reasons, but for tax reasons. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is bad public policy. Now, why should the public care about this? Because the consequences are real and they affect millions. Instead of going on, growing the business, hiring people like we were doing, reinvesting for the long term, like sometimes we talk about that only family businesses do with a long-term time horizon, I knew the alternative for us was that if succession failed, and then the business would fail, that meant the family would also break up. And this is something that's not discussed very often, but oftentimes, most often, when the family business ends, the family also breaks up. I've got first cousins, I've got 4 first cousins, and 2 of them I haven't talked to in more than 40 years. And that was really from a prior generation's family business issue. And this story is not unique to mine. I talked to a lot of family business owners, and this is oftentimes what happens in family businesses. So, beyond the family disruption, the public also loses wealth generation, taxes that are being paid, and charities that were already touched on in local communities across the country. So I want you to ask yourself this question. When an otherwise competitive family business dies, not because of competition from the marketplace, but because it failed at succession, how is that good for America? Okay, sometimes there's a Great Depression that comes along, but more often it's not that. More often, like with my grandfather, he just didn't have a good enough plan, and when he died, a good business died. The thing about it is with succession failure, it happens every single year, actually it happens every day of every year across the country, but it doesn't have to happen. It is potentially avoidable, which is why I'm obsessed about it, and I think Congress should be too. So, you know, family business is not down here in Washington looking for a handout, but Congress should also know that what they're doing with policy is hurting families' businesses and chances for succession. We already have to run an incredible, complex, legal obstacle course with estate planning, and it's already too expensive, it's already too inefficient, and it's filled with way too much risk and too many bad choices. I touched upon just one of them, turning your business over to children. So Congress needs to know how difficult it already is, and please don't create more barriers. I've heard about recent, was talked about earlier, recent pending legislation perhaps in the Senate Finance Committee that is really anti-family succession legislation, if you ask me. If you pass it, I will guarantee you there will be tens of thousands of family businesses that don't make it, that bust out. And with that, many of those families will also break up. But don't be short-sighted about tax policy, because here's the thing. It's not a giveaway to remove the hurdles to succession. Because in the end, with successful family succession, you're going to end up collecting a lot more in taxes. Because when I die, instead of getting a one-time estate tax bill, my family, my kids hopefully will keep going on. They're going to continue paying every year millions of dollars in taxes. They're going to be supporting, and by the way, 28 states. They're going to keep reinvesting in the economy. They're going to keep buying trucks from General Motors, food from local farmers. They're going to keep buying technology from great American companies like Micron and CrowdStrike and countless other providers, supporting local charities, and supporting families, the thousands of families that work for us. But here's the thing. What we do is not special. This is what, many of you that are here with family businesses, is what we all do every single day across the country. So yeah, family business leaders need to do a better job, but I'm really grateful to the family business centers that are here supporting education and helping the country out, educating us about how to do succession. And I also want to convey again, just finally in closing, that it's in the U.S. national interest for Congress, and I urge Congress to take a more productive and positive role in family business succession. Thank you.
So before we ask Dan Vandervliet to come up and present the Next Generation Family Business Survey that we did with Family Enterprise USA and Cornell Smith Family Business Initiative, as well as the Roberts Group, I just want to ask if there's any questions of the family business owners, the family business centers up here. So 5 minutes or so questions, if anyone has it. You got these amazing family business owners. It's time to ask them. Yes.
What do you, as all of your different business perspectives, what do you wish your next generation knew or learned about in an educational environment that they didn't know about?
Does anyone want to take that question?
Dave, you look like you're pondering it.
Well, I'm thinking about my son and what he has said to me. It starts at the dinner table. And what I didn't realize at the time, because I didn't know it, but when I go to tell him stories, he goes, "Dad, I sat at the table for 40 years. And I think one of the things that has stayed with me has been, be careful how you represent what you're doing within the family business structure. That will have a huge bearing on do they come in or not come in based upon how you talked about it. I would never have thought about it through that lens, but that was really helpful for me to understand that. I've been very sensitive to it since, now that I am out of it, and he's no longer at the table because he's married with his wife. But that has stayed with me in a way I was not anticipating.
Yes, Alan?
Kevin, would you talk a moment about how getting back to the community and impact affected your decision about going into the family business?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, in kind of talking about communities and just how family business, and it looks like everybody here has kind of, mentioned that as well. I think for me, I didn't come from family business. I didn't want to go into the family business. I was doing a lot of community engagement. And part of the deal I struck with Mom was, hey Mom, if you ask me to come back to the family business, you're gonna have to give me an outlet for that. And I think, it was through that we were able to have, a donor advised fund to be able to kind of give back to local communities. But I think that's the story of many family businesses, because this is what we do. This is what we are in the cities that we're. I was just talking to John, I don't know where John is, but I was just talking to John about how it's so interesting these family businesses are in the cities that they are. And I said, John was asked, why are we in Cyprus? And I said, Mom wants to be in Cyprus, that's why. That's the reason, and I think that story is the story of many family businesses, is that we invest in the communities that we're part of, and the cities that we're part of. So ensuring, as we've just alluded to, that those businesses continue down, generation after generation continues to support those cities and those communities. So it's a big part of why the ability to be able to do that is a big part of why I stay.
Thank you for that. So Dan, I want to make sure you have time to present the survey results. So will you please come up, and I think that Darius is going to give you I think Representative Kinstra has just come into the room, so your timing is perfect. So Dan, if you'll just hold off a second. You want to come up, and we will happy to hand you a microphone. So I know you want to talk about family business, but I think you also have something specific you want to talk to us about.
How's it going?
Hello. Whatever you want to do. You can stand.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here today and talk to your group on family businesses. Obviously, succession planning is so important. And we see this every day in Iowa, from a rural community with 2,500 people. I was a city administrator and county treasurer and so forth. And one thing that you have in all these rural communities is family-owned businesses up and down Main Street. And I spent part of my life trying to save small businesses on Main Street because when they close, they never come back. From the hardware store to the bakery to the manufacturing plant of 50, 100, 200, 300 workers, whatever it might be. And you name it. It could be larger businesses. In Iowa, where I work, I was with the Foreign Candy Company, a family-owned candy company. And today it's the succession plan. You go ESOP, and you pass on to your next generation. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about. Is right now in the tax code there is the estate or death tax, and that is ready to sunset. So in 2017, you get $5.5 million that you wouldn't be taxed on. Right? So a lot of businesses today, $5.5 million is nothing on assets. Well, when 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act occurred, that got pushed out to 12, and now plus inflation is at 14 million. Right? That's pretty significant. 14 million in some cases, that'll go a ways. Right? But think about it. Anything above that, you can pay a tax rate up to 41%. Very significant. So what we want to do is we got a bill signed 176 co-signers or thereabout, both Democrat and Republican, is trying to get rid of the death tax. Well, twofold. Trying to get rid of it completely, but also make sure that the portion that sunsets next year from $7.5 million to $14 million of exemption, make sure that happens. So that's the first piece. But the second piece is how do you move forward and get rid of the death tax? Right? And I look at the death tax as a pilfer tax. I mean, it's actually the federal government reaching the grave and grabbing that person and saying, hey, you owe up to 41% tax. And with my family, other families that are in the farming business, or small businesses, you look at that and say, how do I pass my business, my farm, whatever it is, to the next generation? So obviously we have to do all these gyration of a trust or key man insurance or whatever. Well, that shouldn't be the case. It should be the case that you should be able to pass it through to that next generation. And that's what I'm working on with many others. And that's what we're going to try to do over the next 12 months. Obviously, it's dependent on who our next president is. But this is a key thing for me that it's not, never get rid of this double tax. So with that, that's sort of what I wanted to note. That is so important. And I know you guys are supportive of this concept. But again, it's all about making sure that that family business, that family farm goes to the next generation and stays open.
We thank you very much for that bill. It is very important. The state tax and death tax is something that every family business faces. So thank you for the bill. Thank you for your support. Does anyone have any questions you'd like to ask the Congressman about?
Yeah, just one, what do you get from the other side?
Well, when I brought it up in Ways and Means, I mean, I got a lot of pushback, especially when I called it a double tax. And the other side just could not understand why it's a double tax. I mean, we already paid tax on all this, all these assets. So now you're just passing it on to that next generation, and they should not be required to pay tax on something that's gifted to them. So, and that's the big issue that I'm falling into on the other side. Now there's some, right? I have a few that are signed on, but the majority would say it's not a double tax.
And the other part is, for those who have not signed on, are they hardened in their thought? Or
No, I think a large part of them are indifferent about it. They understand that we have a revenue issue, that we have $35 trillion in debts, and money's got to come from somewhere. That's always the argument in tax. But again, I just look at it, your business goes out of business. So it's an economic engine. What you're getting here is that business stays open, whether it shuts and then doesn't pay any tax. So to me, that's my argument back. So. and return on investment. I mean, we're trying to say, hey, you don't have to pay tax, and hopefully our return on investment is that business continues to pay its sales tax, property tax, and everything else.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Once again, we really appreciate that, Bill, and your support. Anything we can do to help you, please let us know.
Yeah, I will do, and we're doing a lot of other things. I mean, we're starting to think through next year, obviously, the Super Bowl tax, of what we can do for that first-time business owner, first-time farmer. When you do pass it down to the next generation, can we create incentives for when it comes to income tax, when it comes to buying and stuff like that? So there's a group of us working very diligently to come up with some other incentives to get that passed through to the next generation.
Mr. Kinstra, just wanted to thank you for your interest in understanding that you're going to indicate that you're going to join the family business.
Yes, I'm going to thank you for what you're doing. This is so important, and sometimes you're forgotten about, and it shouldn't be. I mean, your family business, we want to keep these businesses around. They are valuable to every small main street, every small town.
Well, we thank you very much for your support. Thanks again for coming.
My name is Dan Vandervliet. I'm Executive Director of the Smith Family Business Initiative at Cornell University. I want to thank Pat and John of Family Enterprise USA for bringing this together. I always dread getting on the phone with Jack because I know that hang up the phone I have to do. I think she asked me to do more things than my own dean asked me to do, but this is good work and this is fun work that we all get to do amongst the other centers here that are represented because we get to interact with both the students, the next generation of many of these family businesses that we're talking about here, as well as the owners, many of the owners that are represented here as well. Family Enterprise USA has done a great job doing their annual business owners survey. It's a great longitudinal study of kind of taking the annual pulse of family business owners. We wanted to do something that started to look more specifically at the students enrolled in many of our courses. John indicated there's about 40 centers across North America. Many of those centers have some form of class, so we wanted to target those students and learn a little bit more about them. So the data I'm going to share with you is very raw. It's a pretty small sample size. This is the first time we offered it. I think we learned a lot in the process, but I do think there's some interesting nuggets as we look at some of these students and what's on their mind. And I think it relates specifically to everything we've heard about so far here this afternoon from many of these business owners. So the process was really to target those students that are in family business or entrepreneurship related courses that are taught at some of the centers or schools that we're aware of. So for our first time out, we had about 84 respondents. This was only done in the second half of the academic year, so in the spring semester. I think we missed some courses in the fall semester. The goal next year is to start this early and be able to hit all of those classes and really see those numbers begin to grow. And it's a pretty even split between undergraduate and graduate, 53 to 31 at the graduate level. And the age range was anywhere from 18 to 40, and that sort of aligns with that population. Some of these students might have been in executive courses as well. So I think that's why you see that sort of age range there. But in most cases, they represent the next generation in their family business. One question I always really enjoy starting any sort of public conversation with is what's the one word or first term that comes to your mind when you hear the word family business? And considering most of these people were in class and many are from a family business, you can see where they went to very quickly. Legacy, family, of course. But succession comes out huge. And this is, it weighs heavily for a lot of these students. What does succession look like for them? Many of them are enrolled in a course to figure out what their role in the family business may or may not be in the future. Does your family own or operate a family business? A little bit more than half. I have found some students are, they're in these courses for a variety of reasons. Some might be just to learn more about family business, generally speaking. Some come at it more from what we might call the service side. They are possibly on a track for consulting or advising or even investing. In my particular class, I have many students who are actually more on sort of the labor side or human resources. So again, I think this educating this population around what a family business is, why all of these issues are important, whether they are directly from a family business or not, is greatly important. At Cornell, we use the term that what we do is for anyone who works in, for, or with a family business, because these topics really affect all of us. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly just because we're up against time here. But a lot of this speaks to the age, how old some of these businesses are. The majority of students are typically in that second generation in their business, and I think that correlates to this here in terms of how old the businesses are. Many are involved in or employed in a family business in some capacity, so more than half, about 62%. This starts to get interesting. Upon graduation, do you expect to rejoin the family business in some capacity in the future, either immediately or in the future? That's about 70%. Never rejoin, 2%. And then there's also a fair amount that look to start their own business, and I think this is a natural progression for many from family business. They come from entrepreneurial families, and that can often be something that's passed down to them, just that energy to create or do their own thing as they leave. For many students I work with, that 2% number is kind of small here. I think there's more of those. But often 10 years, 15 years down the line, all of a sudden that family business that they grew up with, that mom and dad fought around the table, all those nights at dinner, it looks a little better when you're in your 30s or 40s, right? All of a sudden the manufacturing company or the thing that you really didn't like growing up, it presents its opportunities to you when you're ready to settle down, or in some cases return back to where you are. Again, majority of students, second generation in their family business. Some we see, going into the third and fourth generation, and even a few into the fifth and beyond. A lot of these tend to be more in the agricultural sector, and I know at Cornell we have quite a few students who come from that space. Do they have an ownership stake in the family business? Steve's kids are not in my class, so they're not represented in this here. But I think the interesting one here is don't know. There are some who just haven't had that conversation with parents yet. Our family owns a business. I don't know if I have shares. I have a future interest in some capacity, but I don't know what it means to be an owner in a business. And here, we see this represented here again. What percentage ownership do you have? Annual revenue, this I think really speaks to the students in our classes, typically in that small to medium size range of anywhere between 0 and 50 million, about 75% are under that $50 million threshold. So these are companies that do business locally and are the ones I think that probably have the most impact on. I love this slide because it speaks to the variety of industries. You can't pinpoint where family businesses are because they really are distributed across all industries. And I've kind of made the argument that the Family Business Caucus is sort of trying to make family business its own industry. That we're trying to aggregate the voice of family business across all of these industries. Many in real estate or construction or manufacturing have their own caucuses or industry representatives, but on a whole, we're trying to sort of shine a light on what family business is and that they do impact across all of these. This is where it starts to get a little more interesting, and I think relates to this topic of succession. What are the three biggest concerns you have as they relate to your family's business? One is family communication. Having better communication at the family level, whether that be formal means of governance or just sometimes having those conversations around the dinner tables. It's sometimes startling how little actually gets talked about and how much I think sometimes families might assume their kids know about the business. Two gets more at sort of the operational side of growing revenue and succession planning. And then three is, am I qualified? For many of our students, this is a huge challenge of Am I ready to join the business, and when might that be? That's a big role that many of the educational centers play, is helping these students establish their credentials, and then the students that I get to talk with and work with. This is a huge thing. I graduated with my MBA from Cornell. And I'm probably going to return to my business and jump into a leadership position right away, or is it better to spend more time maybe working outside the business and gradually return once I've established a little more credibility? Does your family have an estate plan? Many, yes. Succession plan, quite a few less, only about 37%. Prenuptial agreements, 25%. Family employment policy, board of directors. So some of those more formal parts of the business, less than a quarter in some cases. And then how many families actively employed, family members employed in the business? About 2 to 5 in most cases, 70%, and again speaks to the smaller nature. I'm going to finish on this, and this is a question that I like asking in my class, and we inserted it into this survey as well, because it was an open-ended question, and it's I think a good way to kind of put a bow on everything we've talked about here today. If you are from a family business center and you run these programs, be they classes or forums, we're trying to create an environment where there is a high level of trust, whether it be amongst your peers, whether it be amongst family members, and the ability to ask some of these questions that can be difficult to ask. And for those who are from the family business side, I think this is a good lesson of what your kids are thinking about. So we're just going to put up a few of the highlights here. So I just want to go back. If you have the courage to ask your parents and or grandparents any question about the family business, what would it be? So in many cases, these are questions that they may or may not have asked. Of the probably 60 or so that answered this, maybe 3 or 4 said, I do have the courage to ask my parents. But the rest of them, more than half of the answers, dealt with some form of succession. You're going to see some of the responses here. What is a succession plan? What made you all start the business? But where do you see this business going? Do I feel like I deserve, or do you feel like I deserve the company? Again, this speaks to the credibility issue. Is the family business worth it with all the conflict that it can bring? Will you ever retire? Which is, when you think about it from a 20-year-old's perspective, that's a tough conversation to have with your parents or other members of the family, because I think it speaks to not only the senior generation's role in the business, but it also gets to our own mortality, which we're all going to face at some point. What if I fail entering the family business? And this is a very complex time in business. We've seen the changes that have been brought about over the last few years with COVID and everything else going on. And the way we've done business for the last 10, 20, 30 years is not the way we'll do business moving forward. So just stepping into any role can be a challenge. And again, related to that, are you willing to change things up? Do you have any plans of taking me into the business? The number of students that I talk to, and they, they say, well, my parent expects me to take over the business one day. I say, how do you know that? Well, I just do. Have you actually had that conversation? Very often they really haven't had these open conversations. So again, creating an environment where there is that high level of trust, and sometimes just using, maybe some of these questions as great starters for your family council, your family boards and council. And then finally, questions around money and wealth. Again, this is a topic that's really hard to talk about for some. For some reason it's taboo, but often these are topics that need to be talked about. What happens when somebody dies unexpectedly? This is often precipitates the failure of many businesses because the proper estate plan hasn't been put in place. So, I think this was a fun survey. This was the first time out. We'll publish these results more formally and share them. They'll be incorporated, I think, into the great annual report that Family Enterprise USA is putting together. Next year, as I said, we hope to do this over the course of the entire year and capture more of these students. And very similar to what FEUSA has done with the owner survey, We want to do this on a sort of a long-term basis. Again, very targeted audience. These are students who are in family business or entrepreneurship-related courses. We've got a bunch that we have included. If there are others at your local university or college, certainly let us know, and we want to get this out to you. So
Thanks, Dan.
I'll leave it there, and we're pretty well.
Appreciate it very much.
That's a welcome.
This timing has worked out perfect today. Congressman Snyder is here. Thank you very much for coming. He's been an amazing co-sponsor of the Family Business Caucus. Your timing is perfect. Could you come up and say a few words to us, please?
1 second. Hey, my sister.
I spent my career doing family business when I was consulting with my late father, and a little bit, sister referred, I went and did something else and she worked with my dad. But I did a lot of work with succession planning, and I did some real estate, so something that's near and dear to my heart. I have visited companies in my district, Massey, Vanilla.
He's not here today.
We have two companies next to each other. What makes paper, I think they're a part of this as well, is Fisher Paper. Part of this?
John G?
I'm not sure now.
So Fisher Paper, third generation, just got on board Wednesday in Chicago for the Lake County Partners. You know, the work they're doing in the community. They're next to a company called Handy Foil. One makes the paper when you go to get your fast food. But the sandwiches wrapped in, that makes the foil for Chipotle. So, you know, two unrelated businesses, but passing on to the next generation. And A, we're happy they stayed in Illinois. B, knowing how hard it is to transition from one generation to the next, I'm happy that they're still thriving. And why is it important from my context, looking at now as a representative for the 10th District of Illinois, is the role and contribution they're making in thriving communities. And I think successful family businesses are a part of their community. I talk a lot about small businesses and the role they play, but family businesses are a subset of the small business world, if you will. It's not just small business, big businesses, but they make investments. And you had up on the screen SC Johnson, which I guess is the Cornell, but it's a company just over the border in Wisconsin. It kills me to talk about Wisconsin. The role SC Johnson plays can't be overstated. But I also know, and my numbers are a little bit old, but I suspect they're still consistent, that it's hard to go from the first generation to the second generation. I think it's, back in my day, it was less than 1 in 3 made it successfully the second generation. It is harder to go from the second generation of siblings to the third generation when you're now dealing with cousins. And that number is 1 in 10. And when you get into family reunion territory and you get into the 4th and the 5th generation, it becomes even more rare. But the companies that can cross over from generation to generation, they're going to have most likely longer tenured employees, a consistency of the workforce. They're going to have it's not just the families who are running the business, it's the families who are working in this business. And the story that many can share, walking through the factory floor, open the back door and say the people who make the stuff inside the factory earn the value that fill the parking lot with their cars, to take their kids to school and everything else. And that's what family business is about. But succession doesn't happen by accident. Our dad used to have a saying, the best way to achieve success in succession is one business and one child. You get an idea of where I get my sense of humor from. Succession is hard, and it takes a lot of planning. And if I were in a different context, not in the Capitol, we'd be talking about all the different steps of planning and setting up the building blocks and rules of entry, et cetera, et cetera. But understanding how difficult succession is going from generation to generation, what I hope you all can share with my colleagues, and I can, as we talk about it. And for example, next year, we're going to be rewriting a lot of the tax bill provisions that expired in 2017. We need to have policies that support businesses that are trying to stay generation to generation and make it easier to keep a business in a family, make it more supportive to bring the next generation into the business and transfer the business to the next generation. And that's something we'll be talking about a lot next year. It's good to see my friend Mr. Smucker. We are next door neighbors. We are across the hall, but we're also in the Ways and Means Committee together. We're talking about succession. I was on a roll and just saying, we've got to find ways as we take what was put in 2017 and address what we need to do in 2025. Make sure what we do doesn't make it harder for family businesses to succeed and thrive, but puts them on a path to grow and continue to prosper. And that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Every one of these caucus meetings, we really, really appreciate it.
Well, I have on my resume, co-chair of the Family Business Caucus. So I have to back up the words, never embellish your resume.
So thank you so much once again.
Thank you, and I apologize any run the next meeting. I wish you luck, and I'll see you later.
So I see that Congressman Smucker is here. Thank you so much for joining us. The Congressional Family Business Caucus, really appreciate it. And as Mr. Schneider was just saying, the theme of this caucus is succession planning, but you can talk to us about whatever you'd like to talk to us about.
Well, actually, I thought I was walking into a reception.
We're a little late for the reception.
What's that?
The reception is going to follow, but
Yeah.
we're running a little late.
Well, no, I obviously at disadvantage, I do not know what the discussion necessarily was about, except I owned a family business myself for 25 years. And I was also part of YPO, and it's part of a forum where several of the businesses in my forum were going through a transition from one generation to the other. So I've seen sort of up close and personal, both in my own business and then saw other businesses of what works and what doesn't work in succession. Obviously, the small businesses are really, family businesses are the generators of a lot of great jobs, but successions can be really, really difficult, and sometimes family successions can be even more difficult. There aren't too many third-generation businesses. You all know that. Most businesses do not survive for that period of time. But one of my reasons for first serving in the Pennsylvania State Senate and then in Congress was really to ensure that our system of free enterprise, our system of capital continues to work. And that future generations will have the same kind of opportunities that I had and that I'm sure everyone in this room has had. So I'm very interested. I serve on Ways and Means Committee. Did I just turn that off?
No.
Okay. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, Budget Committee, and Education and Workforce, focused on economic policies, really, that help to continue to reward individuals who are willing to take risks, who are willing to create jobs. That's been my focus, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm grateful for your voice. I think it's really, really important, particularly as we come to next year. 2025 will be a key tax year. And we're in particular looking at some of the provisions in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was a very successful tax bill that we did in 2017. Many of those provisions will expire, and so we're looking to hopefully extend those permanently. And then it's also a good opportunity to ensure that our tax code is working for business as it should, and there's potential for possible changes there as well. So without having the benefit of having heard the rest of the discussion, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. We know also that you're good friends with the High Center. Right?
Absolutely.
And what you have here in the room today is about 15 different family business centers like the High Center around the country. So good that they have a chance to meet you.
Yeah, and I meant to mention that the High Center in our region, in my district, has been a really important resource and a voice for family businesses, often focused for a variety of reasons. I'm sure, Mark, I know that you've worked with them, but they're there for a variety of reasons, but particularly focused in many cases on succession and ensuring that succession is successful. So I don't know about all the rest of the centers here, but I can tell you that the High Business Center at Elizabethtown College in my area is very, very important to many businesses throughout the region.
Well, we really appreciate you coming. We are going to have a reception, so if you can bear with us, you can attend the reception. If you all just give us 6 minutes, I would like Darius to play the video. It's a 6-minute video on family businesses talking about succession that I hope everyone will find interesting, and then we will start the reception after that.
Start in 1908. My great-grandfather began canning tomatoes, actually 4 years prior for the Stokely family, and then passed the company down to the second generation. And his eventually all 4 of his sons and both of his sons-in-laws were involved in the family business at one time prior to his death. So all through the second generation, we grew through regional expansion. And then in the third generation, when the second generation of family leaders passed away, my third generation cousins, Condon Bush and Jim Ethier, recognized an opportunity to build a brand. And so during that third generation transition, we hired a family business consultant to help advise us through the second to third generation ownership transition. We hired an independent board of directors that guided us in not only building our brand that you mentioned before, but also in developing the discipline of strategic planning. Correct. So I'm a 4th generation family member, and we have some adult 5th generation family members who are involved in the family governance and in the company as well.
We've also recently just gone through a transition where the third generation was able to retire, and we spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in trying to plan to make sure that we, handled that transition appropriately and made sure the organization was set up appropriately. Some of which is just guessing based on what legislation is going to be, and then just trying to figure out how to, migrate all those different things into, the next generation.
Our family has signed evergreen agreements. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but basically it's a commitment to stay private forever. And, and I point out this is really important for our employees, knowing they'll have that stability, for our customers, knowing they'll be dealing with the same people, same company. But it's also important for the communities. And people often, as you say, don't realize that as soon as a company gets sold, the sponsorships that we do for for example, wherever we operate, we have scholarships for the local high school kids, usually in business and science, all the sporting teams, the internships. When local privately owned companies get taken over, sold out, that stuff disappears.
Exit. I was turning 65 and I was beginning to plan my exit. At that time, Paige had not expressed an interest yet. And so I was preparing the business for sale. And the hardest part was going to bed every night and waking up every morning thinking about who might purchase this and how they might treat
my employees or what they might do to this business that I've put my heart and soul into. And that was scary for me. And then Paige stepped up and
it's really not about wealth per se. It's about furthering something that you've started. So a death or two in our family would be disastrous, and it would put the burden of the death tax upon us, coming up with a valuation immediately, and then the proceeds to pay for it. And the elimination of the step up really is quite damaging.
One of the philosophies of our business has always been for you to have ownership within the business, you need to work within the business. So that is a way that over the 100 years or 101 years we've been in business to really try to consolidate ownership to those people that really understand the challenges that our employees face, because they're the people that we work with and the families that we work with day in, day out. But it is, there is a lot of challenges, particularly in a equipment capital expenditure heavy business like construction. While, we may make profits, a lot of what we make has to be reinvested into capital purchases. And also, it's a core part of our philosophy is we want to reinvest in the people that work for us. For us, it's been 20 years of planning, and we're still not completely through the whole estate planning process. Thankfully, my father had the foresight to start early, and I've been able to buy shares, and then once you pay that off, then you buy some more. So I've been living this life of debt, to try to get ourselves to work this ownership transition. But
we have navigated so far transitions. We haven't had. Since I'm third generation, we haven't had a huge need yet. We do see that on the horizon, and I think there are significant headwinds with estate taxes and our financial ability to transfer the business to the next generation of owners. I am quite concerned about, in the event of a death of a major shareholder, how we deal with that if the tax law were to change and make it much more difficult. We want to stay private, and actually our employees want us to stay private.
But we've enjoyed putting together a strong trust agreement that allows the kids as well as their spouses to participate in the company. They will inherit the company. And it has worked very, very well. We try to communicate as much as we possibly can with the kids. They're involved in the investment committee side of what we do. We do venture outside of real estate a little bit, not much, but they make those decisions. They're actively engaged.
That when they establish rules and regulations, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of money on our part, because we aren't a large organization, to comply with what we need to comply with. And that's taking money out of our operation that could be, if we didn't have to do this on a continual basis, it would be in our company for operations, generating income so we can continue to.
Yeah, my dad ran the business. I tell people he ran it till he was 86, and he died at 86. And he was dictating letters from his hospital bed literally days before he passed away. And I'm sure there are many of your members who can relate to that kind of first generation ownership. So I've been in it a long time. And I have a little bit different vision for my daughter. I don't have siblings in the business, which is different from a lot of second generation companies. And I only have one child. So I also am now looking at sort of the cousin consortium model that a lot of ultimately third generation companies end up with. So I don't have some of those kinds of pressures that I know a lot of other families do.
And I would say kind of the key to our successful transitions from one generation to the next, particularly from second to third and then third to fourth has been a commitment to educating the family about family businesses and also creating a governance structure that has facilitated the education of the family and also transparent communication amongst the family ownership group.
Why don't we adjourn, have some drinks, have some snacks, appreciate you all coming. We have a reception, I think Congressman Harrington is going to come into the reception, at least that's the general plan. And that will be until 6 p.m. So, Congressman Goodhart, thank you so much.